All right, there's those guys. Let's get Facebook going here, and then we can start the show. Um, oh, we got an issue with that Facebook. We'll try one more time. If not, then God bless them. We'll see. Spinning wheel. There we go. All right. Welcome in, folks. It is June 11th, 2024, Tuesday evening. It's time for an episode of Building the Broncos Breakfast for Dinner. I am Nick Kendell and joined by today Scott Kennedy. Scott, it's not enough that we do shows, in the mornings. We're here covering your evenings as well. Carl is out. He's enjoying some family time internationally. So glad you could be here to cover for him today.
Happy to pinch in. I haven't been on in a while, so it feels like I'm making up for lost time, at least not on purpose. Yesterday, I don't know if you saw, so while I was gone out of town, my daughter took my microphone and it kind of messed with my settings a little bit, and I'm plugging it back in. As I'm plugging it back in during the show, it popped me in the chat. Popped me live. And we're like, well, hello, there's Scott. And I'm like, and I didn't know I was on. So, I'm glad I was wearing pants.
I mean, it is right torso up. So I mean, it wouldn't
I'm not
even
wearing pants now, but at least I wasn't, but I didn't know I was on. I could have stood up or anything.
God, yeah, that's I mean, everybody's kind of used to it now, right? With the post-COVID Zooms and everything, the Teams meetings. So everybody's had their embarrassing moments, but no, we're professionals in here. We're hanging out, and we got Riptide coming in saying pretty much on time. Salute to you as well. Yeah, we did our best. We were catching up. Scott's having some air conditioner stuff going on. It's nice and cool out here in the Pacific Northwest. So it was pretty good this last weekend, Scott. I got up to Camp Muir. I know you have a buddy who's that big time mountaineer, so he probably knows a thing or two about that spot. But it was good to get out there. My first big butt kicking hike since the little guy's been here. And man, I enjoy type 2 fun out there. Some people like their strolls, it's always hike your own hike or whatever. But I want to have ones where I'm like in the middle of it, like, what am I doing with my life? Why do I do this? And you get back to the car, it's like, that was the best ever. I'm ready to go again. Let's go tomorrow.
You sound like a golfer.
Yeah. A little bit more probably physical punishment on my end.
Mental anguish. Why do I do this? Because on that 18th hole on the approach, I stick my approach and it's the best shot of the day. And you go, oh man, I can't wait to come back. Yeah, the gods mess with you. They really do.
Yeah, it's a good time out there, and summer is here. We got Michael Ronquillo saying, good evening, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. Go Michael. Good to see you, Michael. Hope you're doing well out there in Tucson. Speaking of summer, hopefully it's not too hot out there already. It might be a scorcher this year. Jay Ropers, he is saying, I'm hearing it was Nick's arm talent that impressed folks. He had some deep balls that were pretty good in minicamp today. That's what we want to see now. Again, I want to see what it looks like in the broadcast in the All-22 with my own eyeballs versus, folks on the ground talking about it. But good to hear him and Stidham have been standing out early on, and Zach Wilson has been struggling by all reports.
There's a lot of hate for Bo Nix on Twitter. I was shocked. I'm like, it seems like, people coming into Broncos chats, like there's a long pass, a nice long pass, turns around and catches it. And it wasn't posted with any type of pretense like, oh, this is amazing, or his arm talent isn't a question. It was just like Bo Nix long pass to Troy Franklin.
Yep.
And there's like, that looks like a punt, or did he have to stop? I'm like, guys, I've got questions too, and we'll wait and see. But why hate on everything you see? Because, that's kind of what that platform is.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I don't go into comments that often.
The greatest ever or the worst ever. Kind of hard to say, right? Not real football yet. And,
binary. We've used that word for discussions across all walks of life. There is no middle ground for some reason. I don't really understand it.
Inflammatory for sure. C. Chang's in here. How's mandatory minicamp? Sounds like it's going pretty well. To my understanding, no injuries yet. Scott, don't roll your eyes too hard at this one, but Dulcich was held out today because of some concerns there. So we'll see if there's anything beyond that. But nothing ever since Drew Sanders went down, and that was before OTAs even. Haven't heard anything as far as big injuries for the Broncos so far. So if we can get through this, I mean, there's going to be a lot of different, guys dinged up, maybe hamstring or whatever, but no serious season-ending injuries. We can get through mini camps with that. That's the biggest win I think we can possibly have.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you want to see some of the new guys and all this stuff. You get excited about it. I see Jaleel McLaughlin is looking the best of the running backs, and no pads, he's going to look the best of the running backs.
Yeah.
I think I told you this story, and I can never remember his name. He went to John Curtis Christian, ended up at USC as a freshman, really good skill player. I think he got drafted by the Jets and played a little bit. So if someone wants to look him up.
Was it Joe McKnight?
That sounds right. Best player on the field is a true freshman at USC. And this was a loaded USC team before they went to pads. First day of pads, I felt like Brian Cushing turned himself into a transformer and a blocking drill and a hammer and just boom, right on top of his head. Joe McKnight's knees buckled. That was the end we heard of Joe McKnight for that season. I was like, it's again, it's fun. It's exciting. We're loving football, and Tim Patrick looks great. And it's like, yes, let's get our hopes up, but we still need a little perspective out here. We really do.
Especially with the running backs. And let's want to say a little bit hello to some more people in here, but do want to talk about the running backs in these kind of drills, no pads. David Youngkin's in the house. Good to see you. Mike S. Always good to see you. William Contalano in the house. Dylan Von Arks, our guy. Always appreciate you. Roy Osborne, Donald Willison. Oh, Michael says 106 degrees in Tucson. Hopefully that is a dry 106. Sinji says Bo Nix won the day with the third string. Man, Phil says 112. God, man, that is rough. Chase Wellner in the house. Good to see you, Chase. Always appreciate you. Richard Miles says, hi, Nick and Scott. Welcome to the evening question. How's the defense looking? It's always, what's the phrase I like to use, Scott? I'm blanking right now. It's zero sum, right? Mm-hmm. When you're going up against your own guys, we got this for years with the Broncos towards the tail end of the no-fly zone. Oh my God, the defense, no wonder the offense doesn't look good. The defense is suffocating. Nobody could look good. And then you see the opponent's like, oh, the offense is actually pretty dreadful. Defense is still good, but the offense is anemic. So right now, defense, it sounds like both sides are winning. It's not real football just yet. There's guys standing out, making some plays, but we won't really know we probably won't really know until 4 or 6 weeks into the season. But for minicamp, we're just hoping for some individual battle guys to step up, stay healthy, and make some plays.
Yeah. And you start, it's like, oh, well, Nick Bonito would have had a couple of sacks if it was teams. Again, it's no pads. You want to see the best minicamp pass rusher in the world, drop Pat Surtain in at edge. That would end it right here. I had a huge argument with the defensive line coach at one of the Nike camps and stuff. He's like, oh, so-and-so look really good. I'm like, yeah, but it's a pass rush drill, in shirts. I'm like, let me grab the corners and bring him over here. And he's going to win every rep. Mm-hmm. So the small, quick guys, this is their time. This is absolutely their time. When the pads come on, that's when the big uglies start to have their time. And frankly, that's the one that's more important. But that doesn't mean they can't. Yeah. We're not saying they can't. It's just take it with a grain of salt. When you're not going with pads and you're not going to ground, the smaller, quicker guys have the biggest advantage.
Especially if it's a pass rush drill and you don't have to worry about setting the edge as a run defender at the exact same time, right? Oh, pin your ears back.
You'll see some guys run draws on 3rd and 12. Let's see what happens if I'm coming with my ears pinned back and Garrett Bowles decides to come at me the other direction instead of my first 3 steps being backwards. Oh,
and also there's probably, other than quarterback, I don't know if there's a position that has the competency drop off other than compared to offensive tackle. Like if Nick Bonito would have had 2 sacks today, but it was against can't body offensive tackles. Well, like a lot of those guys, just because there's so few people who actually have the body type and scarcity drives the value of the position by a lot. There's a lot of horrific, they're still NFL players, but compared to the starters, horrific 3rd string offensive tackles. So if you're making your hay against those guys, good luck, but there's just such a difference in the quality of play from the top, even middle tier offensive tackles that are starters to what you're seeing 3rd string in your top 90 kind of guys on your roster.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean they can't do it. Again, you can only beat the guy that they put in front of you. Yep. And if the guy that they're putting in front of you isn't very good and you whip him, great. You're supposed to. That doesn't mean you can't whip somebody that's better in front of you. We just don't know. We don't know for sure. I've said, I had this conversation with someone that grew up in a small school today. I was at a baseball camp and he went to a small school down near Charlton County and was, going against Boss Bailey back then, talking about that. I was like, I never worried too much about the size of the school because I'm from Georgia. and every player you've ever heard of comes from small schools in the state of Georgia. I was like, if I take Herschel Walker out of, I don't remember where he went, but if I take Boss Bailey out of Charlton County and drop him into 6A Parkview, he's still Champ Bailey. As long as you're not playing down your competition and the measurables are there, you're good. Like I said, I think y'all get my point. I'm not trying to disparage them. It's just grain of salt on this.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that Javonte Williams, who's going to make his hay busting through tackles, is falling behind.
Yeah. Good to see you, Richard. We got Phil with the stars saying good eating, Nick and Carl. LOL. Looks different with his beard gone. Yeah, a little different there. I think Scott's a little taller than Carl as well.
A lot older too.
Yeah, you're staying healthy and young. Riptide coming in $5. Patrick, impressive. Court letting the cat out of the bag. Now we have confirmation. That's a good thing. See some comments about not worried about Dulcich being held out. I mean, it's minicamp, right? It's non-pads minicamp. I guess you want to keep him on ice, but we're going to ramp up physicality and everything. And I don't know if they're already concerned about things with him. Red flags for me, Scott.
Are we talking about Patrick on this one or Dulcich?
I'm talking about Dulcich.
Or either. No, I'm okay with it, honestly. I didn't think like he had done anything full yet anyway. So I expect him to be eased back into it. So that doesn't worry me. And again, Patrick could be running as full speed as he is. And I don't have high expectations because we've seen this before. Mm-hmm. He's not necessarily injury prone. I consider injury prone the guys that get all the niggles. It's like, okay, it's this, it's a shoulder, it's an ankle, it's plantar fasciitis or whatever you call it. It's an AC joint. I mean, he just all of a sudden goes down with devastating season enders. There's no planning for that. Mm-hmm. There's no like preventative maintenance on that. It's almost hereditary for somebody like him. It's just the way he's just built. They say he's built different, built a little bit different. Michael Rentillo, I did see this real quick. I'm going to grab this from Michael, Nick. Yeah. The Broncos tried out 5 players today. One name you might know because he played for the Falcons was tight end QB Felipe Franks. Was given a tryout with the Broncos during mandatory minicamp. Felipe went to the University of Florida, and then he went to Arkansas as a quarterback. And he was at the Senior Bowl the first year I got back into this. So that was probably 4 Senior Bowls ago. And I was watching him throw. I'm like, okay, he's just not a quarterback in the NFL. He made a living. They kind of moved him to an athlete because he is a big, good-looking kid, about 6'5", 230 pounds. And he made some hay for the Falcons on special teams and ended up getting an NFL paycheck for about 2 seasons, and has been hanging around. So, he's big, he's can run really well, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to stay in the league and get a job. But he's not somebody you're thinking, okay, this is the answer here. But she sure looks pretty when he's getting off the bus. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, big guy, big athlete. We'll see what happens with him. Maybe there's something for him special teams as well. That's a lot of those big athletes at quarterback can make that transition to tight end. Just a lot of times it happens at the college level when they figure out they can't really cut it elsewhere. But Phil coming in also comment today. We had Sutton at the podium. Good to see Sutton out there with minicamp back in Denver. Denver's probably their only, trustworthy, so to speak, weapon right now. A lot of opportunities for other guys, but Sutton's been a pretty good player for them. Phil comes in and says, so Sutton still wants his money. Will he get it? Yeah, Sutton took the podium today, talked about potentially holding out later down the line as we ramp up toward the regular season and hoping that things can get worked out. He said they're at a stalemate right now. He wants to stay in Denver, wants to hoist the Lombardi in Denver, those kind of player platitudes in that situation. Sutton, I don't think he always is well-spoken and seems like an intelligent guy. So I don't think he's going to take a misstep in the press conference or anything like that. But yeah, it does sound like he is still holding out leverage-wise and could, not take the field once again if the contract negotiations don't progress like him and his team want.
Yeah, again, I think it comes down mostly to the guarantees. Does he get a couple extra, they call it a sweetener, a cost of living increase, which would basically be a $2 million increase to, listen, I restructured. I mean, he still gets his money and he got a raise for it. But now I'm in the club option part where I have no guarantees. I've watched my buddy over here go down in summer camp twice, and talking about Tim Patrick. And if I do that, I got $2 million guaranteed that you basically already paid me. I don't like that. I'm too valuable a player to be playing on this type of contract now. And whether you agree with him or not, it's certainly his right to do that. I think the NFL and their contracts are kind of a sham, personally, when you've got the most dangerous, injury-filled, life-threatening, like, quality of life down the line, when you get into your middle age years, sport of them all, and it's the only one that we talk about that it doesn't have guaranteed contracts. You don't hear about holdouts in baseball. You don't hear about holdouts in basketball. Why? Well, he signed a contract. He should be there. But it's a monopoly-filled game where the contracts are BS.
Yep.
So, no, he signed his contract. He should, well, he did. What really choice does he have? Now he only has one choice, and it's to not play, which is his right.
And there's penalties baked into the CBA that him and his side will have to agree if that's worth it or not. And it'll be up to the Broncos if they want to enforce that or not. And it sounds like, based on Sean Payton's previous comments, that they would. It's one of those ones. I don't fault him at all for the situation, with the lack of guarantees on the money, with how he's getting paid. I think it's, honestly, if all things equal, I think what he's getting paid is probably about equivalent to his value. What is he, like the 20th, 30th highest paid wide receiver in football?
Yeah, I was just about to look it up, and there seems to be a pretty drastic curve there, an exponential curve, where he's at about half of the highest paid wide receiver. You know how that goes, though. People talk about the top 10% or whatever. Well, that's kind of how it works in an open market. You pay increasing multiples for decreasing step ups to the very premium players. So yeah, he's close to about 18 million, would put him close to where his numbers are. And the question is would his numbers be better if he was in a different offense? Yeah, he would. What if he's playing in San Francisco? You swap him and Deebo Samuel the last 3 years and tell me what Courtland Sutton's worth right now. Is he worth 17, 18 million dollars? Probably. Yeah, probably.
I think if he played on a better situation, maybe he would look a little bit like Nico Collins, who kind of didn't come out of nowhere. He's a high recruit, but falls to the third round, big athlete down the field, and has an incredible year last season with CJ Stroud, and gets paid a pretty good contract before he gets close to the market, even. So I think he's getting paid probably equivalent to about what his value is in the league. But again, it's the lack of guarantee, Scott. And when you guys got like Jerry Jeudy and Calvin Ridley, who in my opinion are definitively lesser talented receivers than Sutton, I understand why he's holding out, but I don't fault him for it. And I don't fault the Broncos. You got 2 years of control left. You're not paying him any guarantees. There's a lot of leverage there. There's leverage there in the trade market as well. We saw it with the Von Miller deal. Scott, the Broncos essentially bought a third-round pick. They were getting a second, and they ate a bunch of that contract, and the Rams threw in a third because the way the contract was set up, Denver could pay a bunch of that contract, keep it on the salary cap, and then move him. Well, now you have that as leverage in any negotiation you have if you do potentially trade him. So 2 years of control still with where the wide receiver market's going. I don't think either side is in the wrong here, and I foresee this continuing until the start of the regular season.
Until it gets done, until it gets announced. I mean, it wouldn't cost the Denver Broncos a whole lot. Do you want to keep him or not? Now, having the guaranteed money makes it harder to trade him. That's what it boils down to. That could be what it boils down to. Is if we're going to make a trade, having more guarantees in your contract, if it's just base salary, then that goes with him. That's fine. But it's harder. The more we're paying you, the harder it will be to move you. Now, if you want to trade, you want to be traded, and you get a new contract where you're going, then then you might not want one here. But if we sign one now, it makes it harder for us to move you. So that could be what it boils down to, Nick. But again, I think a good point, and Riptide says Court holds all the chips in this, in my opinion. And I agree with him also here. Appreciates you, Riptide says the Broncos are better with Court. Yeah, and he's not overly expensive. He's at 16, 17 million, that's puts him about 25th on average contracts. Now, average contracts can be BS with all the void years and club options. That really only comes down to guaranteed money. But again, he's been under 20, and under 20 puts you bottom half of wide receiver ones in the NFL. I think he's worth more than that, but is he worth more than that to the Denver Broncos for where they are right now? Going back to the discussion over the weekend of, did the Broncos do enough? Well, do enough what? Do enough in their rebuild, or do enough to get better? Because they did a lot in their rebuild, but they could have done more. Mm-hmm. And as far as doing enough to get better, what the hell were they supposed to do to get markedly better 2023 to 2024 when you're trying to rebuild?
Yep. Yeah, without a doubt. And circling back, talking about wide receivers, Marvin Mims steps up earlier in OTAs and training camp, and now we got Tim Patrick sighting today. By all accounts, this was a Tim Patrick day in Dove Valley for the Broncos. Sounded like he looked really good, smooth out there. Sutton had a few drops. Mims did not shine as much. Troy Franklin had that big catch we talked about earlier, but this was a big Tim Patrick day. And as we've talked about, Scott, ideally, Marvin Mims becomes the wide receiver 2 on this team, given the commitment you have to him, 3 years of control, ascending young talent, it traded up for him, et cetera, et cetera. But your wide receiver 2 option is wide open right now. And I've been very much, I'll believe it when I see it with Tim Patrick, which is, I know it hurts to say that because he's suffered 2 terrible injuries. I feel for the guy. By all accounts, he's a great, hardworking dude. And also, he's so fun to watch, too, because he brings just a tenacity to the wide receiver position, both as a blocker, route runner, attacking the catch point, that you can feel that energy when you watch him. So we've missed him, without a doubt. But I'm very skeptical to buy in because I don't want to be hurt again. But great to hear Tim Patrick had a great day today. And, man, what a huge bonus it would be to the pass catchers and the offense overall if Patrick could become a solid wide receiver 2, like Denver originally paid him to be those years ago.
Yeah, and he got paid and hasn't produced because he's gotten injured ever since he got that contract. Like you're saying, I'm just day to day on him again, because at any given moment, it just kind of comes out of nowhere. Like Dulcich, it's a nagging, lingering injury. You know, I don't know which is worse, Nick. It's like, okay, I'm good. Snap, I'm done. Or this nagging, lingering injury just continues to bother me. It's like with either one of those guys, with Dulcich or Tim Patrick, it's hard to just put your faith in them and your trust in them, even if they're performing well, because you know at any second it could all go up in flames.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he had a knee injury. He had the Achilles injury, back-to-back seasons in June, July, really early in the process. So it always takes a little bit of time to come off of that, but hopefully he is somebody who can contribute because, man, there's targets to be had in this offense right now, and having somebody like a Tim Patrick out there would help a lot. I wonder, this will be a fun thing to watch training camp preseason as well, but how does that impact the role with a Josh Reynolds, right? Josh Reynolds, I feel like, is the most obvious comparison for the role and targets distribution with a Tim Patrick. And Tim Patrick's highs were better than Reynolds, but this regime paid to bring in Reynolds. Not a lot. I know that people are excited about him, but 2 years, $8 million per, and this wide receiver market is not a lot. Maybe I'm getting the numbers wrong there, but it was not a lot. But
no, it wasn't. Especially he's done pretty good, especially when you compare like what Darnell Mooney ended up getting from the Falcons for 400 yards and gets 22 guaranteed across 2 years. That was an indication of what they thought of Justin Fields. So again, that's $11 million for him. You're talking 16 or 17 to get Courtland Sutton. And, Phil has a question. He says, there's a way to pay Sutton and leave his contract alone? Yes. If he shows up and works and they don't cut him, they just keep right on paying him. I mean, that's it. There's your answer. But they've got 2 years left of control with no guaranteed money left. So basically, I'm on you. You're controlling my life of the next 2 years, my financial life, with no guarantees to me. I'm week to week. Man, that's just no way to be as a football player, dude. Not with his resume. You he doesn't want to be that way. You can't blame him.
No, you can't. And also, he is 30 years old, will be 31 this season. I mean, that's the
And Bowles this is his last year on his contract. So he's like,
yes.
fine, I'll play it out and then I'm out of here.
Mhm.
If we don't come to something, then this will end in a separation. But with Courtland, there's 2 years left of non-guaranteed money, which is basically when you either cut a guy or restructure him anyway, because the player doesn't want to play on that contract of no guaranteed money. And you're only putting those 2 years on there to knock the initial salary cap down anyway. Again, the contracts are a sham.
Yep. It is a little bit more interesting though, right? And I'm glad to be as an observer of the game. I'm glad that, it's not like Yankees paying a 34-year-old player a 10-year contract that's 100% guaranteed. And it's like, well, they're just going to eat it at the end and have that on the back end. And other teams can't even compete with that kind of stuff. But there's a little bit more strategy, I guess, involved. But I'm with you also. It's kind of a sham to the players themselves because it is such a dangerous game.
I'm pro player at the end of the day. I'm pro product. We can talk about, unions, whatever, this and this, but when it comes to my entertainment, I want to watch the players. And if I'm paying money, I'd like most of it to go to them. That's especially with the injury stuff, the injury, if it was less money, there's too much money in sports, period. We can all agree on that. He's up there. You guys try flipping burgers for, $10 an hour. That's not the point. That's not the point. That again, he's done some really good work, had some really good seasons, and now he's on a week-to-week contract that the Denver Broncos control for the next 2 years.
Yep.
There isn't any player in the world that wants to be on that deal that has his resume. Let me change that around.
Yeah.
There's lots of players that would love that deal. There isn't a player in his prime with his resume that's worth at least 1.5 times that on the open market that wants to be on a week-to-week deal.
Yeah. One thing I did want to circle back to here, Scott, the Jaleel McLaughlin talk about how he's been the best back so far. Obviously, Esname has been held out with the knee scope going on. You have Watson there. You have P. Ryan. You have more like obviously Javonte Williams, the grinded out kind of runners. It's no shock that when pads aren't out there and the pass rush is the main thing going on, is a lot of one-on-ones, that the smaller, speedier scat back is going to stand out. But I mean, you have experience down there. It's kind of like when you are watching the drills and the 7-7s on at the Senior Bowl, right? It's like, this isn't real running game simulation. You can try, but until it's actually scrimmage and 11-on-11s where everybody has to count for everything, it's hard to evaluate those guys. Hard to evaluate the linebackers. It's hard to evaluate the defensive line, running backs. It's set up for McLaughlin to stand out. I'm glad he is. Sean Payton talked highly about him as well, but this is not real football yet, and it really lends itself to McLaughlin standing out.
Well, even then, you're still not allowed to tackle.
Yeah.
We talk about the lack of tackling in football. They're not allowed to practice tackling live. There's like very little, but when you see any kind of run drills or anything like this, the phrase you will hear a zillion times throughout the day is stay up, stay up, stay up, stay up. They butt a linebacker. They come up and they butt and they stand up, or they'll watch the highlights I have from the Senior Bowl. They go by and just two-hand touch them. There's no hitting. So it's hard. How do you learn to tackle if you're not tackling? So, and again, this goes to the point. There's two more supers coming in about the same thing here, but it goes to the point that this sport is so dangerous that they don't want to play it until it's actually going in the standings.
In value. Yep.
So, that's kind of scary with on non-guaranteed contracts. But Riptide says, is there any way they could not touch the 2024 and guarantee all of Sutton's 2025 contract, even with injury? And Phil says, sorry, what I meant was, can we give him an extra $2 million with the current contract? Guys, they can do whatever they want to. The problem is with guaranteed money, if you move on, that stays on the salary cap. So if I give him an extra $2 million and he gets hurt and then I still cut him, I have an extra $2 million on my salary cap. You have those. That's what when we start talking about financial commitment to the player, you're financially tied to Mike McGlinchey for X amount of years because he has this amount of guaranteed money. So it costs too much to get rid of him. Right now, it doesn't cost anything, almost nothing, to get rid of Courtland Sutton. Same with Garrett Bowles, but they can do that for 2 years. So you can, Phil, you can say, can you give him an extra $2 million with the current contract? Technically, no. You'd have to sign an amendment or whatever. You'd tear that one up and hand him another 1-year deal. So it'd still be a 2-year extension or whatever. They can do whatever they want to, but when you guarantee money, it makes it harder to move on from that player, which is what the club wants. I want the ability to cut your ass anytime I want to. Well, that makes you feel real good as a player, doesn't it?
Yeah, or trade, or just, move on in general. If I was the Broncos with Sutton, do you love him enough to continue? You have 2 years of control again still. Do you love him enough to add on an extra year? Let's say make this year's 50% guaranteed, next year's 25, and put like $2 million guaranteed on 2026. I think that's kind of what I would approach with. Would he have any interest in that? That's where I come from with that. Again, it's just because it's an interesting contract. A lot of times you don't see that zero guaranteed money on the contract until that last year as an option year. So what is it? Only $2 million this year that became guaranteed, or very little that became guaranteed right before the draft. But
I mean, what makes sense is he's got 13 this year and 13.5 of base salary. You sign him to a 2-year deal, which is what he has left. You tear up his current contract. You sign him to a 2-year deal. You turn one of the salary into a signing bonus. So he gets $13 million cash. That's guaranteed. And on the 2-year deal, it raises next year's dead cap number from 3.5 to like 5.5. So it's non-guaranteed. It ends up being a 1-year. You're tying yourself financially to him for 1 year, which right now you're not financially tied to him for any years, but you have control of him for 2 years. Hope this is starting to make sense and it's not starting to sound too redundant. Apologies. I feel like we've been on this one for a long time. Daniel Berry Sports Highlights saying, yo, good to see you. And of course, check this one out. Nick, I want you to read this one out for our friends.
Yeah, so I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago, but it was the notorious GLP's birthday, 85 years old. He says, thanks to my Broncos and MHH friends who wish me a happy 85th birthday. Yeah, happy birthday to you, Gary. 85 is awesome, man. You've seen some stuff for sure, and continue to, let's, keep it going, buddy. We love you. We're really happy to have you here. Hopefully it was a great day with friends and family, and we appreciate you so much.
Yeah, happy birthday, GLP. Thank you for being part of our lives and part of this community.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Continuing on about guys who stand out today, we had 2 defensive standouts, Scott. You kind of already touched on Nick Bonito. Obviously, that's one that the speed finesse rusher and a pass rush drill with no pads. I'm glad that he had 2 sacks that were called off. That's good. He's a very dynamic, twitched up pass rusher that can be a good part of a rotation for the Broncos, team that was pretty poor at getting after the passer overall last season. A lot of that had to do with first and second down defense, but I digress. The other guy who stood out today, apparently according to multiple reports, Riley Moss, Broncos 3rd-round pick from 2023, trade up for him. Other one, Drew Sanders, is already out, but we need some of these young 2022/2023 draft class players to step up and fill roles, because you have 85 million dead cap. You have all those early draft picks gone. Some of these guys need to step up and play and take starting roles. So Riley Moss had a big day today. I know we've been talking a lot about probably him being more potentially safety or a second string cornerback, but that cornerback spot opposite of Patrick Surtain is still up for grabs overall. So tentatively on Riley Moss watch right now after a good day today.
You think of last year's guys and the ones that you were thinking, okay, they need to take the step up from last year's draft picks. And I think the one I felt the best about, injury not counting, Drew Sanders has taken himself out of this, but the talk of we're going to move him from here to here, that didn't bode well. And he looked kind of poor last year. Marvin Mims that's a pretty meteoric leap we're talking about. Is it maybe the unknown? But I felt like the guy of the 3 between Riley Moss, Drew Sanders, and Marvin Mims, the guy who had the potential to really make a leap to a quality starter. They all do, of course, I know. But the one I felt the best about doing that was Riley Moss. I'm like, he was held back by injury. He's in a position where he can make an immediate impact on this. Marvin Mims was too, but he had the opportunity. He didn't really take it. Riley Moss, again, is it just the unknown thing that we're like, okay, this is the guy because we haven't seen him and we don't know any better? Or is it because he really can be that guy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, wait and see. Obviously, they traded up for him. He had some positive last year with special teams and dimebacker role, but very small in dealing with that sports hernia. But Sean Payton today in the press conference praises Riley Moss, talks about his length at the cornerback position, although I don't actually think he has good measurable length, but that doesn't matter. Versatility and smarts, and even states that he's very much in the mix to be the starting outside cornerback, obviously opposite Patrick Surtain. So Moss with a good day. Hopefully he can stay healthy, and it would be fantastic if, again, we talked about it, some of these young players step up and fill roles, because there is opportunities galore for a lot of young players, and that's probably going to be the main thing we watch for this season. And if Moss can step up and become a quality number 2 cornerback on a good contract opposite Surtain, especially in a more, off coverage based scheme, and take the ball away, something that he did really well at Iowa, that can be a big get for the Broncos that are trying to figure out who their young core pieces are. Maybe Moss is somebody who can step up.
Here's a question for Chase, and I'm going to qualify this with a scouting point. He says, did you ever lean one way or the other for Moss coming out of a college as safety versus corner? Now, if you can play corner, you can play safety. So that's a universal truth. Yes, there are exceptions. But again, for offensive line, they'll try you first at tackle. If you're not good enough at tackle, they'll move you inside. The more athletic you have to be, the farther away from the ball. If you're athletic enough to play corner, you are athletic enough to play safety, just flat out. Now, you can have good safeties that are not athletic enough to play corner. So, did we think Riley Moss was athletic enough to play corner in this league? Yes, we did. Mm-hmm. Does that mean he would play, could he be moved to safety? Every corner just about in the world could play some safety. So it's a little bit of a scouting thing, Chase. We thought Riley Moss was athletic enough to play cornerback. By default, that also means he could play safety.
Yeah, there is some processing and intelligence factors as well as physicality. Just to add to your point, Scott, not to contradict you, that some cornerbacks, they don't have the ability to fill run lanes, so to speak, or they are taking the eye candy too much, where, just, here's your guy, play that guy, is a little bit more athlete in space versus processing and everything in front of you. That's a difference between cornerback and safety. But from a definitely high school, college level, the athletes, if you're athletic enough to play boundary, you can play safety as well. So
you don't hear about the guy who lost a step at safety getting moved to corner.
No, never. As far as thinking about Moss, I don't want to go too far in the weeds being an Iowa fan, but Iowa plays a lot of off coverage. And because of that, their cornerbacks and defensive backs that are playing cornerback are hard to evaluate, because in the NFL, eventually, if you're playing cornerback, you're going to have to play some form of man coverage. Even the zones they play, a lot of them are match zone, right? So it's still like it's man to start and then kind of goes to zone, or zone to start and then it goes to man, excuse me. But you just didn't have a lot of that at Iowa. So can he play cornerback? Well, can he play press man? Can he play man? I mean, you didn't see that so much. He played off coverage and they almost play a little bit more like they have 4 safeties out there rather than, 2 cornerbacks and 2 safeties with a lot of their defense. And damn, it works for them in the Big Ten. So no fault to their schemer there, but it's just, that makes them a really hard evaluator. And I did go back, Scott. I mean, kind of not to be, too actually about this, but Riley Moss, Sean Payton did say he had good length, 8th percentile arm length for the cornerback position.
Not what he said.
Okay. What did he say?
Because while you were saying that, it just came in.
Okay.
I'd say you feel his length at corner. So it's more like a perception.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying though, but he was more saying about height.
Yeah.
Because then he said short corner after that.
Yeah.
So here's the quote exactly, because it just came through. Thank you, Chad. Here we go. That's valuable for that. I just had it. He's smart. I'd say you feel his length at corner. When I say that, just even on that play, it's a tougher play to make if you're a short corner, so you feel his length. So he's talking about Height.
Height. Yep. A lot different
I
than
know
length,
what you meant.
in my
I do know
opinion.
what you
But
meant.
we got Lando Lee coming in saying, good evening, Nick and Scott, just showing some love. Thank you so much, Lando. We really do appreciate that. Hope you're doing well over on the Facebook side of things. Phil comes in and says, with the relationship Nick has with Franklin, could he be a sleeper for us? The second volume pass catcher right now is wide open for Denver. So could Franklin be a sleeper? Absolutely. You do not have entrenched guys. Even your number one right now is missing, potentially missing more.
We just spent 20 minutes talking about your number one receiver
Yeah.
and the problems going on there.
So absolutely, Franklin could be a sleeper. I don't think I'd be going out there and spending, big money on him or a high draft pick on him in the fantasy world, because I don't expect Denver to be throwing it around like crazy unless you're playing like rookie draft and it's like a keeper league or something. You can get him like 16th, 17th round in
leagues,
but dynasty league, something like that. Yeah, but he's definitely a sleeper for us just because, again, there's opportunity to be had. It's kind of, again, I've used this reference a lot on the show, Scott, but in The Dark Knight, where the Joker snaps the Q over his leg and like, okay, whoever
tryouts.
Yep, tryouts. That's where we're at. There's opportunity, and you can look at it negatively and be like, okay, that means you don't have a lot of known quantity, not known quality out there, but you have young, feisty guys and a chance for some young players to step up and really make a role for themselves and build momentum through the season. And wherever the outcome is in the win-loss column, it'll be what it is. But again, opportunity for young guys to step up, and Franklin is surely one of the ones that we should be keeping an eye on.
We should keep an eye on him, and don't call me Shirley.
Yeah, without a doubt. So
I know, boo. You know what? I've forgotten about this. It's now almost 6 months through the year. I got a dad calendar for my birthday, Christmas, whatever. They're right together, so I forget which is which. I've saved some of the good ones, and I keep meaning to, like, while we're letting it breathe, I was like, I should read some of these.
Let's do it.
And that bad reference was just made me think of that. So maybe I'll read them one day. I always want to. I was like, I don't want to start the show with it. People will tune out.
I'm for it. Definitely a happy early Father's Day to those of you in here. Jay asks, how do they measure arm length? It's the here to the fingertip. I know that, like,
is it inside? I was just thinking about that the other day. For some reason, I was walking around. I was like, I have pretty long arms, I think.
Yeah,
because my wingspan isn't that great because I got little narrow shoulders.
It's the where the arm connects to the shoulder, and it goes to the fingertips. So I know people like, I think it's Joe Thomas. He gets really upset about it because for offensive linemen, you're not blocking like this, Frankenstein or whatever. You're that. So really, he thinks it's more important that you measure here to here. And teams are gathering that information. Like we have like the generic kind of stuff from the NFL for the combine, but you go to like a big college program like Michigan, and they have like unbelievable metrics and data for all these like flexibility and tests and like the width of your shoulder and all these different things that they've gathered for recruits for years and years now and compiled what actually matters to them. They're operating at a different level than what we have. So as far as something like that, and we talk about the arm length, it's what we have access to. So it's what we can go off of, but it is there to the fingertip.
All right. I was wondering where they started because, my shoulders pop when I raise my arms. So that would probably disqualify me there anyway. Crack. Okay, you're out of here.
I mean, it's not always the most standardized, right? That's why you get some measurements that are different from the Senior Bowl to the Combine as well. Like weight will fluctuate, whatever, but like your height's different. Your arms are 3 inches longer. What the heck happened? But things like that, it's what we have to go.
I had a big argument with somebody who ran the Nike camps, and I love him to death. But he's like, I was like, I stood right next to the guy. I looked him in the eye. He is 6'1". He's not 6'3". You mean to trust you trust your eyes more than you trust, this number on a piece of paper? Yes, I do. And when he went to another camp, he measured 2 inches shorter.
One of those ones that send you back to the drawing board for sure. But guys, we're at 6:47 Mountain Time. Super Chat slowed down a little bit, so we're going to wrap it on up here. It is June after all. Appreciate everyone coming in. Appreciate Scott for stepping in today. Shout out to all our Super Chat people in here. Riptide, Michael Ronquillo, Phil McLaughlin, multiple times. Riptide multiple times. God bless you. Gary Palmer, happy belated birthday. And Lando Lee. Make sure you guys are following us on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle. If you're on Facebook, join us at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as that ticker says there underneath, please subscribe to our channel over on YouTube. Like the show on the way in, on the way out, after the fact, whatever. It helps us a heck of a lot. And share on your social media platforms. Appreciate everyone coming in. Hope you guys had a great Tuesday. Any final thoughts, Scott, before we see each other again in, 12 hours?
I've got like 10 more things to say, but we're going to have to hold it for tomorrow. No, I'm teasing. We'll be back tomorrow morning. If you want to continue the conversation, there will be plenty more to talk about. We won't spend 20 minutes on Courtland Sutton's contract. But again, Nick and I are pretty pro player on this, and the non-guaranteed money stuff just bothers me. Not with just Courtland, with the NFL
in general.
It's gotten a lot better through the years. It needs to take another step, in my opinion.
Yep. Yeah, the CBA, right? It's on them. I got to negotiate that. It's hard. It's one thing. I mean, not to go too far into it, Scott, but NFL folks were pretty darn upset with the Browns when they gave out that guaranteed contract to Deshaun Watson, and then you had a couple other contracts that have happened since then. You didn't see those big, fully guaranteed stuff for quarterbacks. If it's not happening with the quarterbacks, it's probably not coming down the line anytime soon.
I mean, you can have 100% guaranteed contracts. They just don't need to be 5 years, $250 million.
Yep.
So do less, but actually give more.
Yep.
Instead of this BS $1 billion contract with $100 million guarantee. I mean, the guaranteed money is all that really matters. So what difference does it make? I mean, I don't know. The hypocrisy and the level of dishonesty is frustrating.
Yeah, it is. It is. But anyway, guys, we appreciate you coming in, hanging out. Michael Ronquillo closing us out here saying, great show tonight, Nick and Scott. Thank you so much. You guys have a great rest of your day. Continue to choose kindness and compassion, and go Broncos.